Lanterns of the other world. You may be lying in bed now, letting the silence settle like mist around you. Outside, the world sleeps. Inside, your thoughts drift like leaves across a quiet stream. The day has loosened its grip, and now you find yourself at the soft edge of dreaming. Imagine a sky where stars are not just lights, but doorways, each one a quiet passage, each one a memory. A sky where every soul has passed through again and again, each time wrapped in new names, new. Life's birth is not a beginning, and death not an end. In every culture, in every time, people have whispered the same questions into the dark. Where do we go? Who do we become? Do we come back? We'll walk among the stories that formed them, from deserts to temples, mountaintops to oceans, across centuries and faiths. We'll trace the shapes of the soul as others once imagined it, each tale a flickering lantern, held out by someone who once feared, hoped, remembered. Let these stories be soft guides, not to explain, but to steady, not to teach, but to accompany. You do not need to remember, only to feel. Just listen as the realms open, where the soul wanders, a quiet prelude. Before there were names for the gods, before temples carved their prayers in stone, there was a question, quiet, ancient. Where does the soul go when the body sleeps, when the body dies? It is not a question of endings. It is a question of motion, of what continues even after the breath falls silent. The earliest humans did not separate the soul from the world. They felt it in the wind, in the bones of animals, in the cries of the newborn. It moved through things seen but sensed, not owned but part of the great pattern in the Arctic North. Among the Chukchi and Inuit, the soul is not one thing, but many. A person may carry more than one spirit inside, some connected to the mind, some to the breath, others to the shadow, or the name. When death comes, these soul parts scatter. Some remain near the body, some move into the earth or animals. Some are reborn into children of the same family, a quiet continuity that does not need proof. The ancestors return, not in memory, but in motion. In the way a baby stares too long at the sky, or holds the old one's silence in their eyes. Far from the snow and wind, ancient India shaped a different path. The Vedic texts later refined into the Upanishads whisper of Atman, the eternal self. The soul that outlives the flesh, that moves from life to life like a river finding new banks. It is not bound by one form, nor fixed in place. Instead, it moves according to karma, not as punishment or reward, but as balance, action, and its echo. Rebirth is not a sentence, but a cycle. A soul may rise through lifetimes, human, animal, divine, each shaped by the inner weight it carries. Some souls grow lighter. Others remain heavy with attachment, returning again and again to the fire of longing. Yet, in the heart of this cycle, there is a stillness, moksha, where the self dissolves back into the source, not erased, but returned. Like a spark to flame dot, you begin to feel how varied the soul's journey has been imagined. Not as a single road, but as many streams that part and rejoin. The Egyptians, facing west toward the dying sun, spoke of Ka and Ba, cavital essence, the life force. Ba, their soul that travels, that dreams. Together they form the person's spirit. But at death they split. The Ka remains near the body. It needs offerings, bread, beer, incense, to stay strong. The Ba takes wing like a bird, drifting between worlds, visiting the living in dreams, returning to the tomb by night. If the rites are done properly, the soul is made whole again. Ka and Ba rejoined. And then the journey through the underworld begins. A soul must pass through 12 gates, each hour guarded by gods and serpents. At the end waits judgment. The heart is weighed against a feather. If it is light, the soul joins the blessed dead, living forever in a mirrored world of sunlight and fields. If the heart is heavy, the soul is devoured, not punished, erased, even. Here, in ritual and fear, there is a quiet reverence for the idea that the soul goes somewhere, that death is movement, not stillness. In the forests of pre-Christian Europe, before the Roman gods arrived with names and laws, the soul was seen as breath, as vapor. It left the body with the last exhale. Sometimes it lingered in the smoke rising from a funeral pyre, in the cry of an owl at night, in dreams that felt too heavy. Some believed souls returned through trees, oak and yew especially, that roots were paths for the dead, and stones held voices if you pressed your ear to them long enough. And in Greece, in the centuries before and after Plato, the soul became something to question, to map. Plato described it as immortal and eternal, but forgetful. Each time it is born, it forgets where it came from. The body distracts, desires cloud. Only through philosophy, through deep, inner remembering, can the soul begin to recall its true origin. He taught that souls dwell in the heavens before birth, seeing perfect forms, and that life on earth is a dim echo of that vision. to learn. To suffer, to love, is to slowly remember. And when death comes, the soul must choose again to return to the cycle or to rise. Not all views of the soul offer comfort. Some are rooted in fear, but even fear shaped into story can guide us toward meaning. In the high Andes, some Amara communities believe the soul could become unkonku, a restless presence, disturbed and dangerous if rituals were ignored. This is not cruelty, it is caution, a reminder that the dead are not fully gone. They watch. They wait for respect, for continuity. You begin to see the pattern across continents and centuries. In every language and symbol, the soul is not still. It moves, not always upward, not always peaceful, but never forgotten. Even in modern times, when the soul is spoken of less, when science has mapped the brain but not the mind, the questions remain. What stirs when the body is still? Where does the eye go in deep sleep? Why do some places feel full even when no one is there? Perhaps this is why the stories continue, not to define the soul, but to follow it through gates, through lives, through memory and forgetting. This chapter is a doorway, but it does not swing closed. Stays ajar, a breath between one thought and the next. Let it rest there, not answered, just open. India, the wheel turns again in the heart of India, where the rivers are sacred and the air holds the scent of ash and jasmine. The soul is not seen as lost, but as returned. Here, death is not a doorway that closes. It is a turning quiet, endless, purposeful. The soul does not end. It continues. This belief is older than temples, older than names carved into stone. It begins in the Vedas, for great collections of hymns and ritual chants composed over 3,000 years ago. They speak in a language of fire and rhythm, of cycles, of sacrifice. The early Vedic people did not yet describe rebirth in the way it's known today. Instead, they saw death as a passage to the world of ancestors, Petraloka, a realm of light and continued being, accessible to those whose funeral rites were done properly, whose sons lit the fire, whose body was offered back to the elements. But beneath these rites, a deeper idea began to rise, one that asked, what is the self? What survives? And why does suffering return, life after life, even when the rituals are right? These questions echoed through centuries and found form in the Upanishad texts of reflection and inquiry. Here, the soul takes on a name, Atman, not just the breath, not just the mind, but the deepest self. indivisible, unborn, unending. It is not separate from the divine. In fact, the highest truths, the Brahmanes said, to be the same as Atman, the self and the source, are one. But most do not see this. Most forget. So the soul takes form. It is born into a body. It lives, it desires, it suffers. And when the body dies, the soul returns again and again through samsara. The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Samsara is not a punishment. It is motion, like a wheel spinning, like a tide that recedes and returns. The soul carries with it the weight of its actions, karma, and karma is not judgment, it is cause and effect. Every thought, every choice, every silence, they shape what comes next. Not as reward, not as revenge. Exact, a soul that lives with cruelty may return to learn compassion. One who clings too tightly may be born into loss until they learn to release. And some souls, having seen through illusion, begin to rise. The end of returning. You begin to feel how different this is from fear-based afterlife ideas. There is no eternal punishment here, only learning, only unfolding. And yet, even within this gentle view, death is still marked, still watched. In Hindu belief, death is not left unguarded. It has a keeper, a judge. His name is Yama. Yama is among the oldest deities mentioned in the Rig Veda. He is said to have been the first mortal to die, the first soul to find the path beyond. Because he walked it, others could follow. He becomes the Lord of the dead, but not with cruelty. He is not a punisher. He weighs. He observes. In many depictions, Yama rides a buffalo. He carries a noose not to harm, but to gently pull the soul from the body when its time is done. He is accompanied by 2 dogs with 4 eyes each. They guard the thresholds between realms. Yama's role is not to terrify, but to restore balance, to remind each soul of what it has done and what it must still learn. He records karma not as a list of sins, but as a map of consequence. Story that continues. After death, the soul follows its karmic weight. Some may wander for a time, clinging to life, confused by departure. That's why rituals are performed. Anti-este the last sacrifice. The body is bathed, anointed, wrapped. Prayers are chanted. A pyre is lit. The fire releases the body and invites the soul to move on. In the Garuda Purana, one of the texts that explores the soul's journey after death, the process is described in careful steps. The soul, now without a body, travels. For days toward Yama's realm. It meets guides. It reviews its life. It feels the weight of joy and of harm. And then, according to its karma, it is reborn. Maybe into a body close to its former life. Maybe far away. Maybe into wealth, illness, clarity, confusion, but always with purpose, not to punish, but to teach. There are many views within Indian philosophy, many schools of thought. Some accept a personal God. Others reject all form. But most agree. The soul returns until it sees clearly. Until it remembers, even within Buddhism, which rose from the soil of India. Samsara and karma remain, though without a permanent soul. Here, the self is seen as an illusion, a bundle of causes and conditions. Yet, even so, the cycle turns, and the consequences remain. The goal becomes nirvana, extinction of clinging, end of becoming. Not death, but freedom from returning in. All of this Hindu, Buddhist, the soul, or what moves in its place, is never alone. Its journey is vast, but it is watched, witnessed, held. You imagine a river, the Ganges, perhaps. Its waters carry ashes and flowers, prayers and time. The living gather at its edge. They dip their hands. They whisper names. To bathe in this river is to be cleansed. To die near it is to be freed. Some believe that if a person dies in Varanasi, where the Ghats meet the river and the smoke rises gently, they escape the wheel. That moksha is given there, not by ritual, but by presence, because the city is said to sit on the edge of time, where life and death meet, and release is near. This is not superstition. It is a kind of reverence, a way of trusting that something sacred watches the soul and waits. You begin to feel how karma is not fear, but order. Not divine punishment, but natural unfolding. The same way a seed becomes a tree, the soul becomes its next life. And again, until the seed no longer needs to bloom. There are saints, philosophers, renunciates, who step off the path of becoming. They see the self as sky, untouched by the clouds of form. And they leave behind not just desire, but identity. Some sit in silence by rivers. Some chant until their body forgets itself. Some walk into the forest not to be found. And yet, their presence remains, as if their souls lightened of weight still circle, not returning, but watching as the Ganges flows endlessly. So too does the soul, until it doesn't, until it rests and the wheel turns. One last time. Egypt, a feather's measure beneath the low curve of the Egyptian sky. Where the desert meets the hush of memory, the soul continues. Not in a straight line, but in a return, a weighing. A weighing, a whisper between gods and dust. To ancient Egyptians, death is not feared. It is organized, anticipated, prepared for with care and reverence. The journey into the afterlife isn't an escape or punishment. Te is a crossing. Quiet and sacred, through the realm they call the duat. The duat is not hell. It is not heaven. It is something more precise, more reflective, a mirror of the world left behind, but softer, more symbolic. In this place, things do not burn, they balance. Every soul must pass through it. But first comes the judgment in the book of the dead, a text buried beside nobles and pharaohs. The path is clearly marked. Spells, instructions, invocations, each designed to guide the Ka, the soul essence, safely across. For in the duat, the soul is not left to wander blind. There is structure, ritual. There are gods. The most solemn of them is Ma. At Ma, Ah is not just a deity. She is the principle of truth itself, cosmic balance, harmony between the seen and the unseen. In art, she is shown with a single ostrich feather upon her head. That same feather becomes the measure of your soul. The heart called Ebus believed to hold memory, conscience, and emotion. It is not the brain that carries who you are, but the heart. And so, upon death, your heart is not discarded. It is kept. For the final trial, you arrive in the hall of Mat. It is vast, silent, lit by no sun, but heavy with presence. Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of the dead, leads you forward. He does not speak. He only watches, his black form calm and unmoved. To your left, Osiris sits enthroned green-skinned, regal, holding crook and flail, the lord of the underworld. He does not speak either, not yet, and then. Your heart is placed on one side of the scale. On the other side, the feather of Ma single quotes, "At no one pleads for you." No lawyer, no prayer, no favor, only the weight of your truth. If your heart is light-free of lies, cruelty, greed, it balances. The feather floats, still. One not earned by worship, but by harmony. But if the heart is heavy, swollen with wrongdoing, the scale tips, and then comes Amit. She waits beside the scales, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. She is not evil only final. If the heart is unworthy, she devours it whole. Not as torture, but as closure. A soul consumed does not continue. It ceases. This is the only true death, the second death. Even now, you can feel the clarity of it, the simplicity. not punishment, but consequence. There is no fiery torment, no eternal weeping. Just a return to silence. But if the scales remain balanced, you pass through. And the journey does not end, but shifts. The duat is layered, shifting, a place of gates and guardians, rivers of flame, lakes of still water, and winding roads. Each hour of night, the sun god Ra passes through the duat, battling chaos, lighting the path. And each hour, the soul travels with him, facing challenges, not to suffer, but to transform. Here, knowledge protects, reciting the names of gods, the shapes of stars, the spells of protection. These are not magic tricks, they are memories, pieces of truth the soul must remember to stay whole. And walking beside you quietly, Thoth, the head of an ibis, is the keeper of wisdom, the divine scribe. He records everything, your name, your deeds, your journey through the duat. He does not alter, he does not judge, he simply writes. The scrolls in his hand are not meant to accuse you, they are your record, a reflection. So much of Egyptian belief is this: not fear, but clarity, to be seen, to be known fully, and still, to be offered passage if one lives in balance, and it begins in life. Even before death, Egyptians prepare. Tombs are built not just as graves, but as homes for the afterlife. Bodies are preserved with careful rites, organs removed, purified, and sealed in canopic jars, each guarded by a protective spirit. The heart remains, but the rest is placed under divine care. Even the burial position matters, feet facing west, toward the setting sun, the door between worlds. And in these tombs, painted walls tell the story again and again of Osiris rising after death, of Isis, his sister and wife, reassembling him, restoring life with magic and devotion. Their story is not just myth, it is blueprint. It teaches that the soul, too, can be made whole again. There is something deeply tender in these beliefs. They do not promise eternal joy for belief alone. They offer a path of responsibility, of self-reflection, to live truthfully so that when death comes, the soul does not resist but steps forward. No need for fear. Even today, the Nile winds through the land like a memory. It flows north against gravity, against logic. A river that defies, a river that returns. You imagine standing at its edge now, feeling the air dry and still, the temples carved into stone, the quiet faces of sphinxes, the weight of time, and the strange lightness of truth. The feather still waits, always the same. What would your heart weigh? How would it feel, too? Be that still, to stand between the jackal and the scribe, and simply be measured, not punished, not praised, only known, and let the Nile carry the rest. Tibet, between death and birth, the roof of the world, where the air is thin and the mountains rise like still prayers. The Tibetan view of death breathes differently. Here, death is not a break, not a silence, not a wall. It is a bridged delicate and continuous leading the soul into a space between spaces. This in-between is called the bardo. The word means simply intermediate state, but within it lives an entire cosmology, layered and detailed, drawn not from fear, but from deep observation of the mind. Rooted in Tibetan Buddhism, the teachings of the Bardo Thottolofan, called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, describe what happens in the moments, days, and phases after physical death. But this is not a book written for the dead. It is read to the dying and studied by the living dot, because to know the bardo is to prepare for death without clinging, without illusion. There are 6 bardos in total, but in this chapter we follow the 3 that arise at death. The first is the Chikai bardo, the moment of dying dot. At the time of death, Tibetan teachings say the body unravels in stages. Earth returns to water, water returns to water, breath slows, vision dims, thought detaches from form, and then there is a clear light, pure, luminous awareness. This is the mind's natural state, unobscured. If one can recognize it, dissolve into it, and merge with it, liberation is possible, but for most, the clarity is missed. The habit of clinging, formed over a lifetime, pulls the soul forward into the next bardo, the Chaithnide bardo, the bardo of visions. Here, the soul no longer sees with eyes or hears with ears, but experiences reality shaped by karma and consciousness. 42 peaceful deities appear first, faces of compassion, forms of wisdom. They are radiant, without threat, but they are intense, shining like mirrors, too bright to bear for those unprepared. Even light can feel like punishment. Then come 58 wrathful deities. They are wild, fierce, often terrifying in appearance. Some hold weapons, others wear garlands of skulls, but they are not demons. They are the same energy's truth, compassion, awareness, faring in more urgent forms. Not to harm, but to awaken. Each one is a mirror. If the soul recognizes them as mind-born projections, it moves closer to freedom. If not, fear takes hold, and the visions become more tangled, more vivid. There is thunder, chasing shadows, moments that seem endless, but still no harm is done. Only the self confronting itself. This is why the bardo thodl is read aloud to. Remind the dying, moment by moment, these are illusions. Do not be afraid. The soul, now shaped by its reactions, slips into the third state, the sitpa, bardo the passage into rebirth here. Karmic momentum draws the soul toward its next life. The teachings say that during this stage, the soul begins to perceive wombs, parents, new beginnings. It feels attraction, aversion, desire, of which pull it toward a specific birth. One aligned with past actions and tendencies. The choice is not random. It is not assigned by a judging God. It unfolds naturally, like seeds falling into soil. And yet, even here, liberation is possible. If the soul recognizes the process for what it is, simply another illusion, there is still a moment of choice. To release instead of attach. To dissolve instead of be reborn. But that clarity is rare. More often, the soul enters again into form, into time, into forgetting, and so the wheel turns. What makes the Tibetan view so unique is its gentleness. There is no eternal damnation, no final verdict, only patterns of awareness, flowing, shifting, repeating, till awakened. The bardo is not a punishment, it is a process. That's why Tibetan Buddhists prepare for death throughout life, not by fearing it, but by studying it, meditating on impermanence, practicing letting go, becoming familiar with the mind's tricks and projections, so that when the bardo comes, the visions do not surprise. Many monks rehearse dying in meditation. Some can recognize the signs of their own passing days in advance. They sit quietly, lie down, and let the process unfold. When they die, the body is left undisturbed for several days. It is said that consciousness remains in the body briefly in subtle dissolution, especially if the person has reached a certain clarity. This window matters. It is why in Tibetan homes, sacred texts are chanted aloud near the dying. Incense is lit. The air is kept still, not to cling but to guide. After death, rituals continue for 49 days. Each day mirrors a stage in the bardo. Each reading reminds the soul, you are not alone. This is the bardo. Remember your true nature. For loved ones left behind, these days are a time of reflection, not just mourning. The teachings emphasize compassion above all, that the thoughts and emotions of the living can affect the clarity of the dying. So, families are encouraged to let go, to pray, to send loving intentions, not despair, because even grief is energy that echoes. There is something deeply tender in this. The soul is never judged. It is offered vision, offered light. And even when that light is missed, it is offered again. In the next cycle, you imagine yourself lying beneath a thin sky. Wind brushing against prayer flags. A voice reading softly, reminding you, do not be afraid. These are just appearances. Recognize them, and you wonder, okay, what might arise in your own bardo? Would the peaceful deities feel like comfort or overwhelm? Would you recognize your own mind reflected back? The journey is not linear. It spirals. It teaches. And in between death and birth, there is no rush, only mirrors. Greece, remembering the river Lethe beneath the olive trees and ruined temples of ancient Greece. A quieter world waited, one not marked by sunlight or empire, but by silence. And the souls who passed through it in Greek thought, death was not an end, nor a promise. It was a passage. And what followed was not heaven, nor punishment, but something deeper, underworld, layered with memory, forgetting, judgment, and choice. The journey of the soul began with descent across the threshold of life. The soul entered Hades, a place of torment, but of shadow. There 5 rivers flowed, each one carrying a piece of the soul's passage. Among them was Lethe, river of forgetting. Lethe was not feared. It was not cursed. It was necessary. To drink from Lethe meant to forget the life just lived. The joys, the griefs, the names. Not out of cruelty, but mercy. For memory could weigh down the spirit. Lethe offered release. A blank page before the next chapter. But not all drank in the secret traditions of Orphic and Pythagorean thought. A different path was whispered. A path of remembrance. Orphics believed the soul was divine, trapped in a cycle of rebirth, a spiral of lives, learning slowly, shedding ignorance until it returned to its original purity. They taught that the underworld was not just geography, was a map of the self. And in that map, 2 rivers stood side by side, Lethe, the river of forgetting, and Mnemosyne, the river of memory. Those who sought awakening were instructed, do not drink from Lethe, drink from Mnemosyne. Instead, fragments of these teachings survive, etched into Orphic gold tablets, buried with the dead. Thin leaves of gold, inscribed with directions for the soul. You will find a spring on the left of Hades' halls. Do not approach, but you will find another from the lake of memory. Tell the guardians, I am a child of earth and starry heaven. These were not poems. They were instructions. Ritual words meant to be remembered at death, repeated in the in-between. A soul who remembered could recognize the illusion of earthly life, could see through the veils, could step off the wheel of rebirth. But most forgot Greek myths were honest about this. They did not promise easy salvation. Even the hero Orpheus, who traveled into the underworld to retrieve his beloved Eurydice, failed, not because of weakness, but because of doubt. At the final moment, he looked back and lost her. His story echoes across the mysteries, a reminder that to return from death, one must not only descend, but trust the Eleusinian mysteries, among the most sacred rites in Greece, also centered on this journey. Rooted in the myth of Demeter and Persephone, the rite reenacted the descent of Persephone into the underworld and her return each spring. Participants fasted, walked in torchlit processions, and entered hidden chambers. What happened inside was secret. No records remain. But the few who spoke afterwards said only this: those who have seen the rites no longer fear death. The message was quiet but clear. The soul could descend and rise again. Plato later echoed this in his dialogues. He described the soul as immortal, cycling through lives, forgetting and remembering, ascending through virtue. In his myth of a soldier dies in battle, spends time in the underworld, and is sent back to life with a vision of how souls choose their fates. He sees some souls climbing, others falling. The choices are not random. They're shaped by memory, character, desire. Before returning, each soul drinks from Lethe deeply. Some just a sip. The more they forget, the more likely they are to repeat their mistakes. And so, memory becomes the key, not memory of events or names or people, but memory of truth, the inner knowing of what we are. Beyond form, to remember is to awaken. You picture yourself standing at the edge of two rivers. The other offers remembrance, sharp, bright, weighty. Which do you choose? There is no right answer. The soul, in Greek thought, is never forced. It is offered, taught, and given time. Even the judges of Hades Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Eocustid not cast souls into punishment. They guided them, listened, weighed the truth of their lives. There were places for each kind of soul. The ordinary went to the asphodel meadows gray, quiet, without pain or pleasure. The heroic went to the Elysian fields green, peaceful, filled with light. And some began again. The Pythagoreans believed that souls could be reborn as animals or people or something in between, depending on their choices, their clarity, their attachments. Pythagoras himself claimed to remember his past lives. He taught that the soul is bound to the body by desire and freed through discipline, study, and compassion So each life becomes a chance, not a tense, to remember more than you forget. A chance to grow lighter, quieter, closer to truth. The Greeks didn't rush this. They carved their wisdom into marble. But let the mysteries remain soft around the edges. There was space for myth, for silence, for questions that echoed tonight. One of those questions lingers. If the river of forgetting runs through every death, what part of you resists the water? Japan, the realms beneath the petals in Japan, a cherry blossom never simply falls. It turns. It lingers. It releases, not as an end, but as a change in form. Rebirth in Japan is not a singular belief. It is a quiet presence shaped by centuries of Shinto reverence, Buddhist cosmology, and the delicate threads of folklore that stitch nature and spirit into one seamless world. There is no single doctrine here, no absolute path for the soul. Instead, there are layers, subtle, symbolic, and often unspoken. The human soul, in Japanese thought, is not confined to a single lifetime. But neither is it guaranteed to rise. The journey after death follows unseen roads, shaped by karma, devotion, duty, and sometimes love. In Shinto, the indigenous faith of Japan, life and spirit are inseparable. Every rock, every stream, every tree carries Kamiya's spiritual essence, alive and alert. People, too, are part of this flow. They transform. The spirit becomes an ancestor, honored and remembered in home altars or ihai and seasonal rituals. These spirits are not distant. They watch. They guide. They may return briefly during Oban, the lantern-lit days of August when families welcome their ancestors back with food, light, and incense. There is comfort here. The soul does not wander alone, but deeper beneath these traditions flows the influence of Buddhism, brought from China and Korea, shaped by centuries of Japanese belief, and carried in part through the 6 realms of rebirth. These realms form a cycle known as the Rokudo, the 6 paths a soul may take, depending on its karma. At the top is the Deva Realma, place of divine beings, radiant and long-lived, yet still bound by illusion. Below it, the Asura realm, filled with demigods driven by envy and endless struggle. Then comes the human realm, the most balanced of all. Here, suffering and joy exist side by side. Only in this realm can one awaken, because only here does one have both desire and the chance to overcome it. Beneath that lies the animal realm, where instinct rules and wisdom sleeps. Then the realm of hungry ghosts, or gaki spirits, consumed by longing unable to satisfy their cravings. Thin-necked, hollow-eyed, always reaching. And, at the lowest, the hell realms, Jigoku, where pain purifies, and time stretches long. But none of these places are eternal. In Japanese Buddhist thought, these are not final destinations. They are states of being, shaped by causes and conditions, shifting like weather. A soul may rise or fall, again and again, until it learns to see clearly, and always, somewhere between these realms, stands a figure of mercy, Jizo, Bosatsu, gentle, patient, always waiting. Jizo is the protector of travelers and lost souls. But in Japan, he holds a special tenderness for children who die young, in temple gardens and forest paths. You'll find rows of stone Jizo statues, small, round-faced, often wearing red bibs or tiny hats, placed there by grieving parents. According to belief, children who die before their parents cannot cross the river to the afterlife. They are caught between worlds, tasked with building stone towers to atone for the pain their early death caused. But Jizo comes to them. He hides them in his robes. He sings to them. He carries them across the river himself. In a world where even the smallest soul might suffer, Jizo offers relief without condition. His presence hums gently through the landscape, a reminder that the soul is not judged only by its past, but also by the compassion it receives. And yet, not every spirit moves on in Japanese folklore. Certain souls become Yuri, restless spirits, bound by unfinished emotions. A betrayed wife, a fallen warrior, a mother searching for her child. These spirits remain tethered to the world of the living, appearing in pale clothing, with hair unbound and eyes unreadable. But even the yurei are not condemned. They are simply not yet complete. Through ritual, remembrance, and prayer, they too may find rest. Here, rebirth is not just about what comes next. It's about how the soul is held between. Even the natural world participates. Kitsune, the fox. Spirits are said to be shapeshifters, messengers of the god Inari, protectors, tricksters, sometimes lovers. They can be animals, spirits, or reincarnated humans. They remind us that transformation is not always upward or linear. Sometimes it moves sideways. Sometimes it curls inward. You begin to understand the shape of it now. A cherry blossom does not fall to its death. It becomes part of the earth again. It feeds the roots. It rests. And when the season is right, it rises differently, quietly, without force, in every realm of Japanese belief. Rebirth is relational. The soul is not alone, but held within a network of family, memory, karma, nature. gods. Each moment lived, each emotion carried, each name spoken after death. It all matters. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is forgotten. And yet, not everything is remembered with clarity. Somewhere between the 6 realms, in a dream space just beyond the lantern light, a soul might still be choosing to rise, to return, to rest and beneath the petals, the path is already forming. Mayans, the 9 layers of Zybal beneath the dense green canopy of the ancient jungle. The Maya spoke of a descent, not into damnation, but into the earth. Into the earth, into Shibalba, the place of fear, not terror, not punishment, but a deeper kind of awe. The Maya did not see death as an end. It was a return, a ritual, a journey through layers. They believed the world above the world of the sun, of crops, of kings, was mirrored below by something older. A vast, sacred underworld with 9 levels, each marked by challenge, shadow, and cleansing. Shibalba was not chaotic. It was not hell. It had structure, order, purpose. Its rulers, the lords of Shibalba, were not demons. They were guardians, judges, representations of natural decay, human frailty, and the soul's own fears. Names like Scab, Stripper, Stab Master, Flying Scab, and Gathered Blood weren't designed to horrify. They symbolized internal wounds, ego, illness, pride. Illusion. Each level of the underworld tested a part of the self, and each test was necessary, because to be reborn, one must be stripped clean. You begin the descent not by falling, but by agreeing to go. In Maya mythology, the hero twins Hunahpu and Zabalang descend into Shibalba willingly. They are tricked, mocked, killed, but they do not fail. Their story is not of escape. It's one of confrontation, of learning the rules of the underworld and outwitting them, not by force, but by wisdom. It is said they pass through river after river of blood, of pus, of scorpions, then through house of knives, house of jaguars, house of darkness. Each place holds a trial. Each one reflects a part of the inner self. The house of cold freezes the breath. The house of fire burns pride away. The house of bats requires stillness. Or the soul is torn, and yet none of it is meaningless suffering. The Maya saw the cosmos as a cycle knot, a ladder. The same way maize, their sacred crop, must die in the soil to sprout again. The soul, too, must pass through dark places to return renewed. Maize was more than food. It was life itself. According to the Popol Vuh, the sacred Maya text. The gods created humans from white and yellow corn. Corn was planted, died, and came back. So did people. So did time. Their calendar reflected this. Belief circles within circles. Linear time was foreign to them. The future could be seen. The past returned to. Xibalba wasn't far below. In some Maya cities, like Palenque, temples were built like mountains, high above and yet the tombs of kings were hidden deep within, beneath stairways. To die was to go inward. To return was to rise. There are caves in Guatemala and Belize where the air still holds offerings, pots, bones, carvings. These were not scenes of terror. They were gateways. Sanat's natural sinkholes were viewed as entrances to the underworld. Water led down. Water led inward, and always the soul moved in 9 levels, slowly, deliberately. Some believe each layer corresponded to a state of transformation. Not punishment, but purification. You lose your name, then your face, then your memory, until what remains is something quieter, cleaner, still human, but no longer bound by what you carried in life. And when the soul has passed through all 9, it may rise, sometimes as a plant, sometimes as rain, sometimes as a child born in the same village. The Maya saw no break between the living and the dead. They spoke to their ancestors, dreamed of them, left food, candles, carved glyphs in there. Honor in the dark. There was always something alive, always something sacred. You imagine the stairway now. Moss on stone. The air thick but cool. You step downward, not in fear, but in understanding. Each step takes you closer to something essential. Not away from life, but toward its root. The lords of Xibalba do not call you by name. They wait, because the journey is yours. And in the quiet below the earth, where vines give way to shadow and time coils inward, you are not alone. The calendar has turned, and the maze is beginning to rise. Norse lands through the roots of Yggdrasilin, the stillness of the north, where the wind carves silence across ice. The myths of the Norse do not roar. They whisper. Not all souls ride to Valhalla. That is only one hall, one ending among many. 2. The Norse death is not a straight path. There is no single heaven, no universal judgment. Instead, there are realms, 9 of them, all held within the branches and roots of something older than gods. Yggdrasil. The world tree, it is not a symbol. It is a structure, a living map of reality. Its trunk holds the center of the cosmos, Its branches stretch into the sky. Its roots dig deep into hidden places, to cold lands, quiet lands, sacred lands. Each realm it connects holds a piece of the whole dot in the myths. Humans dwell in Midgard, the middle enclosure. Gods live above, in Asgard, behind the rainbow bridge. But below, there are other destinations, realms like hell, named for its keeper. This is not a place of torment. It is not fire and brimstone. Hell is still, pale, rooted in shadow and mist. It receives those who die ordinary death, sold age, illness, the quiet slipping away, and it does not punish them. Hell is ruled by a goddess of the same name, Hel, daughter of Loki, half living, half dead. She waits for them. Their memory softens. Sorrow settles. The Norse did not believe everyone must strive for heroism to find peace. Valhalla was for warriors who died in battle, but those who lived gentle lives, or passed in winter's sleep, moved elsewhere to the realm beneath. You begin to see how the Norse viewed the world, not as light versus dark, not good against evil, but as a balance, a web more than a ladder. The Norns sit at the base of Yggdrasil, where one of its roots drinks from the well of Ortha, well of fate. Three sisters, Ord, Verdung, and Skuld, what was, what is to come. They do not speak. They weave thought fate, for the Norse is not a sentence. It is a thread. It bends, it tangles, it joins other strands, and yet it holds. Even the gods cannot escape it. Odin himself rides Yggdrasil, not to conquer it, but to learn from it. He hangs from its branches for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, in search of wisdom, not power. In that stillness, he receives the runes, symbols of meaning, of magic, of language. The tree teaches not by speech, but by silence, by structure. You imagine the roots now, thick, gnarled, slick with frost. They do not threaten. They cradle. They wrap the realms like veins through a body. You move downward, not to fall, but to descend past the realm of Fire Muspelheim, wild and bright, past the realm of Ice Niflheim, old and frozen, into the quiet of Hel. This is not punishment. It is pause, a time between endings and beginnings. Not every soul is destined to return. The Norse myths do not guarantee rebirth. They offer no comfort that everything must continue. But in some stories, when the end comes, it makes room. Ragnarok. Twilight of the gods is not only destruction, it is a clearing, a cycle reset. Fire devours. seas rise, wolves swallow the sun and moon. But not all is lost. A few gods survive. 2 humans emerge from the shelter of the tree itself, and the world begins again. Not identical, not restored, but renewed. This is the deeper rhythm in Norse belief, but recurrence. Yggdrasil shakes. It groans, but it does not fall. Its roots hold steady. Even when time breaks apart, the tree does not favor the living over the dead. It holds them all, even in hell. There are shades of warmth. Stories tell of loved ones buried with gifts, not to bribe, but to comfort, of stones carved, with runes placed at gravesides, not to mark endings, but to remember connections in this world. Memory is not erased by death. It is softened. Snow falls gently on the mound. Frost gathers, not as punishment, but as stillness. The soul sleeps beneath it, not in fear, not in sorrow, but in a quiet known. By those who have walked far enough, the Norns still weave Yggdrasil. The thread continues. African beliefs. Ancestors among us saw across the continent, across languages, landscapes, and centuries. A thread runs through African spiritual traditions, quiet, resilient, and near. Death, in these beliefs, is not a severing. It is a shift. The body rests, but the spirit changes state. It does not leave. It lingers in the Yoruba tradition of West Africa. The concept of the WNT, Inwa, those who came before, is foundational. Ancestors are not memories. They are presences. They are not past. They are here. You imagine a village in twilight. The smoke from cooking fires rising slowly, spiraling toward dusk. In that smoke, in that silence, are the dead, watching, guiding, not as ghosts, not as threats, but as elders beyond the veil. In many Yoruba homes, a small altar rests in a quiet corner. Photographs, cowrie shells, a cup of water, a whisper of incense, not to worship the dead, but to acknowledge them, to invite them to continue walking beside the living dot. In this view, the soul passes through stages at death. It journeys to the realm of the ancestors, or undot. There, it reflects, watches, waits, and sometimes it returns. Rebirth, in these traditions, is not an individual act. It is communal. A soul may be reborn in a grandchild or a distant cousin, not to repeat, but to continue. The cycle of life is not a straight line circular. It bends gently, echoing back into itself, and it is shaped by rhythm. The drumbeat always is near, not only in music or ritual, but in the body, in heartbeat. In footstep, the Igbo of southeastern Nigeria hold a similar reverence to them. Ancestors, Niger remain part of the family structure. They are spoken to, consulted, honored at times. They are feared, not out of superstition, but out of respect. They uphold moral order. They watch how the living behave. Ancestral shrines are places of reflection, not sorrow, not loss. Names are passed down with care, not simply for remembrance, but as vessels for return. There is a sense in Igbo thought that one lives not only for oneself, but for those before and those after. A sacred bridge, a living continuation. You begin to feel the weight of this worldview, gentle, yet firm. There is no rush toward an end, no anxiety to escape the world. Instead, life and death dance together. They do not argue. They accompany in Zulu belief. The ancestors are known as the Amadlos. They are not abstract. They are involved. Illness, dreams, misfortune, these may carry ancestral messages. When something in life misaligns, it may be the Amadlos speaking, calling for ritual, for attention. This is not punishment. It is correction. A nudge back into balance. To live well is to remain in rhythm with the ancestral line. Ceremonies of appeasement or thanks are not distant affairs. They often take place at the family homestead. Offerings are made. Words are spoken aloud, and the ancestors are treated always with the intimacy of kin. Across African spiritual systems, dreams are not dismissed. They are portals. In dreams, the living may be visited, taught, warned. Elders long gone may arrive. In sleep, not as illusions, but as guidance. Time in these systems is not linear. It flows outward like ripples from a central source, and in the center, the ancestors. Each action taken by the living echoes into their world, and their presence flows back into ours. The living and the dead are in constant dialogue, even when unspoken, even when unnoticed. Some African cosmologies speak of three worlds: the world of the unborn, the world of the living, and the world of the dead. But they are not isolated. They overlap. They pulse. They mirror the rhythm of drumming, repetition and variation, silence and sound. In many tribes, death rituals are not final farewells. They are introductions. When someone passes, they are spoken to, not about, but to. Their role changes, but their value does not end. The living begin to host them in songs, in names, in rituals that pass through generations. In some traditions, The process of becoming an ancestor is not automatic. One must live well, die well, and be remembered well. This gives shape to morality, not as fear of hell, but as respect for legacy. A life well lived becomes a life well continued, and even those who falter are not discarded. They are prayed for, brought back into harmony. African spiritualities, diverse and regionally distinct, all carry this root belief: nothing is ever truly alone, even in death. You are part of a lineage. Even in silence, you are surrounded. The spirits of those who came before are not far. They are in the soil, in the wind, in the blood, and in the hush between drum beats. You can feel them, not gone, not gone, just moved, still watching, still waiting for the rhythm to call them home. Native America, the circle without ending, the sacred philosophies of many Native American nations. Time does not move forward like a line. It does not run out. It circles back. The world is not a ladder, but a hoop, round, unbroken. It is the rhythm of breath, of seasons, of lives returning in new forms. The Lakota speak of the sacred circle, or Wyankapi, a central symbol of connection. Life moves through this circle, from birth to youth, to age, to death, and then back again. This isn't metaphor, it's understanding. You imagine a child's small footprints in the dust, followed by those of an elder walking slow. Both sets of prints face the same direction. Both belong to the same spirit, moving through different forms. In Lakota belief, the soul, or Nagi, does not end with the death of the body. It continues its journey toward purification. Sometimes it is said to linger near the family. Sometimes it travels west, toward the setting sun where spirits return to the source. And sometimes it comes back, not to repeat, but to restore. The Hopi people of the Southwest tell of Kachino spirit beings who dwell between worlds. Kachinos are not gods, nor are they ancestors in the typical sense. They are messengers. They bring rain, wisdom, and dreams. Some are spirits of the dead, transformed through ceremony. Hopi children are taught to respect the cats in us with fear, but with reverence. Their dances, their masks, their carved wooden forms remind the living that the unseen world is close. The Katsina dances, held in plazas surrounded by stone homes and watching elders, are not performances. They are conversations between the human and the spirit world. In each masked dancer, an ancestor returns for a time. In each movement, the past and future bend back into the present. Among the Cherokee, there is the belief in the soul's patha journey that follows the moral choices of a lifetime. The soul may pass peacefully into the spirit world. Or it may struggle to find its way, lingering between realms. But always there is the chance to be welcomed home. Ceremony matters. Harmony matters. To live rightly is not about reward, but about balance. Balance with land, with tribe, with self. When a Cherokee elder dies, the soul is honored, not only for who they were, but for the role they may play in what comes next. Because life, in this worldview, does not end, it bends. The Navajo, or Dine, approach death with care. Their term for the afterlife is not fixed, it changes with each story, each elder's voice, but what remains constant is a respectful distance. Death is a transition that must be handled with precision. So the soul moves on properly and does not linger. Yet even so, the soul is not gone. It moves through the land. It becomes part of the rhythm of nature. Wind, light, dust, a return to the elements, but not a vanishing. The Dain speak of Hazo harmony, beauty, and order. To live in Hazo is to remain in balance with the cosmos. The cycle of life and death is not something to fear, but something to keep in rhythm. With two fall out of balance is to suffer. To return to balance is to heal. You begin to see the shared shape in these beliefs, not uniform, but echoing from the prairies to the mesas to the northern forests. Native teachings speak of interconnection. The soul is not alone. It is part of the land. The tribe, the ancestors, the animals, the stars. In many plains tribes, the soul is thought to move westward after death. The west direction of endings, but also of rest. There, the soul is renewed. There, it may meet the spirits of kin, or rejoin the great mystery. But that is not always its final place. Some spirits return to be born again, not randomly, not without purpose, but to help mend what was broken, to offer wisdom already earned, to continue the work of their people. You imagine the wind on the open plains, carrying the scent of sage and wood smoke. A whisper moves through the grasses. It is not a memory, it is a presence, a life once lived, and lived again. In the Ojibwe tradition, the soul is believed to journey along the path of souls, crossing a great river, perhaps the Milky Way, guided by spirit helpers. At the end of the path, the soul enters the land of the ancestors. But even there, it may listen, watch, wait for the moment to return. Reincarnation is not just possible, it is expected. Names are sometimes given to children, based on visions or dreams, signs that the soul of a relative has come back. And so the living and the dead remain close, closer than most can see. Each new child is not only beginning but continuing. not a blank slate, but a returning song. The medicine wheel, used by many tribes, reflects this belief. It is a circle, divided into 4 directions. Each direction holds meaning: birth, growth, death, renewal. Spirit moves through each quadrant, and the wheel keeps turning again and again. In some Lakota teachings, the Great Spirit Waken Tonka does not dictate fate, but offers the circle as a path. You may walk it with awareness, or you may forget, but always it returns you to the center, and at the center, stillness, home among many nations. The return of a spirit is not a matter of debate. It is observed in the eyes of a newborn, in the way they laugh, in the dreams that surround their arrival. An elder may say, "She has come back," and that is enough. The circle is not a metaphor. It is a way of being. It holds a memory. It holds return. It holds your name, softly in the wind. And somewhere, perhaps beneath pine trees, or in the cradle of Canyon Lethe, child is born with your voice already inside them, singing your unfinished song and beginning the journey once again. A soft gathering of paths now. You've wandered far, through temple doors and forest shrines, across ash-covered rivers and snow-lit fields, beneath stars named by different tongues, each land with its own belief, yet none fully alone. You've stepped into the firelit stillness of the Vedas, heard the karmic murmur of rebirth echo across lifetimes in the East. You've drifted past silent tombs where pharaohs dreamed of rising again, weighed against the feather. You've passed through deserts where prophets walked, through cities built for heaven, and fields where ancestors still wait in the soil. And in each place, no matter how distant, no matter how different a question, hums quietly beneath it all. Where does the soul go? Does it circle back? Does it rise, dissolve, or simply change shape? Now, here, at the quiet edge of your journey, the answers do not harden. They soften like morning mist over river stone. You begin to see rebirth is not just about coming back. Sometimes it is the act of letting go, of being released from a name, a form, a self. In Buddhism, nirvana is not a destination. It is the end of grasping, the flame that no longer clings to its wick. In Christian mysticism, rebirth is the heart awakening to grace, not returning to the body, but returning to God. The Yoruba say the ancestors remain, not as memories, but as guides. In dreams, in illness, in celebration, rebirth here is relational. A soul continues through the family line, not by repetition, but by presence, by rhythm, by blood. Among the Lakota, To live again is to walk in balance, to help the land heal, to sing the song you began before. Each of these paths holds something sacred, not to compete. Each belief, a thread fine, strong, rooted in centuries of watching the sky, burying the dead and dreaming beyond breath. No thread is perfect. No thread alone. You begin to see the patterns. Some traditions teach that the soul is born again, and again until wisdom is complete. Others say one lifetime is enough, and the rest is rest. Some place judgment at the center. Others offer only transition. Some hold tightly to names, to laws, to promises. Others ask you to watch the leaves fall and know this too is the path. There is no single mountain. There are many slopes, each shaped by land, by language, by longing, and still. The summit feels familiar, from the caves of Siberia to the islands of Polynesia, from the scrolls of Tibet to the oral maps of the Navajo. There is always something more, something after, something returned. Even in traditions that reject reincarnation, the idea of transformation remains dust to dust, but not to emptiness, to earth, to cycle, to renewal. The truth is not just in the stories. It is in what the stories hold: grief, hope, a need to continue. Rebirth in many of these paths is not proof of what comes next. It is care for what came before. The Egyptians preserved bodies so the Ka and Ba could find them again. The Hindus cremate so the soul can be released. The Tibetans expose the body to the birds, returning it to the sky. Different endings, same offering. A soul unfastened. Some say memory follows us. Others say the soul is washed clean. In nearly all there is motion, a shift, a breath. You might feel it now, the soft way your own spirit responds. Not with certainty, but with stillness. The more you've heard, the less you need to decide. And maybe that is the gift. Not an answer, but a deeper reverence for the mystery. In the end, what returns may not be the self, but the light, the song, the kindness left behind. You remember now, the bodhisattva who returns out of compassion, the ancestor who walks beside the newborn, the saint who offers prayers from the other shore. You begin to feel that perhaps these are not so different. Perhaps the shape of rebirth is not meant to be known, but trusted in water, in dream, in silence. The paths you've walked all point quietly toward the same horizon, not with matching footsteps, but with shared longing, a desire to mean more than one breath, to last beyond one heartbeat. Not forgotten, even science, in its language of matter and energy says nothing is lost. What burns becomes heat. What breathes becomes wind. What thinks becomes memory. In someone else's voice, it is not proof, but it is something, a gentle rhythm, a pulse. This is not the end of the journey, but it is a still point. Here, the paths gather, not to blend, but to sit beside one another, to rest. And as they do, you may begin to sense something unspoken. A presence, not in the words, but in the space between them. The soul has never been alone, not in life, not in death, not in what may come next. There is rhythm in your breath, memory in your blood, a thread in your hands, and somewhere on the other side of sleep, a door waits to open, not to bring you back, not to take you forward, but to let you pass softly,